We are discussing on the roundtable discussion on the appraisal of the history of social design in India. As you know, from the last 4 days, it will continue in a different chapter. And right now, today we're discussing about the global dimensions of social design. And with us, first I welcome to Dr. Ajanta Sen, adjunct faculty, IIT Mumbai, IIT Bombay, Mumbai, and founder Design in India, Jello Labs and UNICEF, and President's Award winning DKJ startup based at IIT plus SNE IIT. Again, then next is Mr. Amit Jain, CEO, JMS Group Chandigarh. Very good evening, sir, and welcome in this forum. And then now, next is the Surya Teja Bachu, is the Assistant Professor, Product Design, School of Arts and Design, Boston University, Hyderabad. Welcome all of you and welcome participants. Today we are going to discuss about the social dimensions in the relevance of the global scenario of social design. Maybe the first question comes, request to Ajanta ma'am, please try to explore some points on that. The first question raised on the think tank of that. What can we see about the global dimension of the social design? And after the Ajanta Singh ma'am, Mr. and Surya sir will continue, or maybe anyone can help in between that. But in between all of you three, the points are going between them, and whatever your views in continuation of the earlier discussion, it will continue like that. Please, ma'am. Ajanta ma'am, can you hear me?
It was muted, I'm sorry. So good afternoon, good evening to Manish and to my fellow panelists, Mr. Jain and Surya. And it's wonderful to be able to meet you because I know from my past experience with Manish that he always manages to get people who say things that are interesting, engaging. And I also know that his audience comprises learners that are drawn from various areas of life, but certainly students who are very, very interested in knowing what Manish has to offer to them through his different panelists and from himself as well. So thank you, Manish, for organizing this and calling us. And I look forward to a good session. The topic is of paramount interest today, and part of the reason why it is compelling is because it has got mired in a lot of misunderstandings of what social design is. What I would do, Manish, is in aligning myself with the question that the meta question that you just asked about the origins. What I'll do is I'll bring in three strands of events that led to the rise and fall of social design. And then that could serve as a context and a framework for us to, move on to a lot of other things. And this is like a broad meta frame, so I expect that it will be helpful for the discussion itself. I look at social design, first of all, in terms of what quickly would be social design. I look at social design as being something that creates social capital, which means wealth in the social domain. I look at social design as something that necessarily caters to the greatest good of the greatest numbers. And I also qualify social design as something that is not necessarily frugal design, because not all conditions, situations, circumstances are bootstrapped. I would instead like to align this basic idea of social design with what could be termed as prudent design. And therefore, any design that is prudent but not profligate and follows the norms of serving the greatest good of the greatest numbers, and in the process creating social capital uh, situated within social reality, could be a good starting point for social design. I have been, Manish, when you did that fantastic 3-month course in social design, that was when I actually really got down to, that was 2 years ago. That was in the year of the pandemic. And the pandemic actually provided us with more than a philosophical idea of what it is to be able to do things together. It made the whole world sit up and think about the need for building social capital and ask the question, have we been building social capital, or have we been building capital that's not necessarily beneficial for the greatest numbers? And I think the a primary example of that would be this push towards a lot of startups that we celebrate as being unicorns and who are not necessarily in the social design domain. But of course, the pandemic was like the greatest teacher to tell us it's time for us to sit back and reassess and understand what social design is. At that point in time, I realized in doing my research that if you look at the internet, the origins of social design very loosely puts itself to about a decade or decade and a half ago. And that puzzled me because instinctually I know that social design is something that we grew up with. And that actually started my search for the true, origins of social design. Today, I place it as three distinct strands where I look at the behavior of human as human nature in the first strand, where human interacting with nature creates a set of circumstances. The second strand being human interacting with humans and the outcome of that. And the third strand being human interacting with technology. In the first strand, which is about human and in human largely interacting with nature, that actually celebrates the start of social design, and that would be about 75,000 years ago. It happened in ways that are considered to be extremely innovative. And what came out of it, which is language, is today considered to be one of the most, important innovations of all mankind. Uh, Initially, it started with using gestures because humans knew how to use gestures and it was one on one. And humans also always had the proclivity to message. And so they would message on rock surfaces to indicate their angst or their fear about the circumstances, which basically was posed by very large animals bigger, stronger, faster than them. uh, but eventually they were able to piece together. So when they drew on the caves, it came from their sense of artifaction. When they started interacting with one another, and both these were either singular enterprises or simply between two people. So the idea of gestures would have been articulation. And then when artifaction and articulation came together through abstraction to form symbols, and the symbols combined with gestures, is when language and speech was created. The moment speech was created, it was created because of a very deep understanding of a necessity, which meant that if you did not work in groups, you would perish. And therefore, speech's origin is actually the origin of social design. At that point in time, this singular invention was able to create the most important element of social design: A, the idea of sharing, and B, the idea of being able to work in groups. And it quickly then also created a very, very important civilizational binary, which we are grappling with today, which is the division of labor between male and female. Because at that point in time, the human allowed himself or herself to realize that biologically the male was the stronger body counterpart of the two, and they could go outdoors and hunt, do group hunting, and the female could be at home and nurture home and hearth, including raise children. So in this strand, uh, humans worked with nature, and the impact of it in one line would be that we built what is called commons. We built what is also, through a deep reverence of nature, we learned to use all our resources in shared domains, which I said is commons, but created as talk about it as sacred space. The second big the development happened about 25,000 years ago, although when we were in school, it was pegged at 5,000 years ago, which is the start of farming, another great invention, which allowed humans to actually create, a free time for society. So some could then go and create knowledge, some could create skills, some could look after security, etc. And that was purely in a social domain with communitarian cooperative understanding, and it worked really well. In that, of course, humans slowly began to rearrange nature by building, by engineering innovations, for example, build canals, etc. And therefore, there was a little bit of shift away from nature, but not all. This continue to revere nature. But what actually happened at that point in time is that this urge to control other humans came in. It wasn't to control nature, but it was to control humans. And that was the first time that property started going into individual domains through to powerful groups that levied taxes on others, and that was the start of royalty, nobility, etc. But by and large, social design remained the order of the day. I want to mention a very important thing from the first strand is that the first strand created social design, not just in our understanding of its origin as language, but also the first strand of globalization, where humans, animals, plants, and seeds moved across vast geographies to create facilitation where there was no distinction made between who could use or who could not use. In the second was, of course, where control came in, some control came in, and conquest happened. And so social design did not see any kind of eclipse. Social design thrived. But I could then show two different kinds of examples where in the domain of social design, there would be those like Hammurabi, the Hammurabi Code, which exhorted people to use water in a careful way. And if someone violated that code, that would have consequences for the particular group of people that violated the code, which basically showed Hammurabi's empathy for the finiteness of natural resources, even though Hammurabi was actually a conqueror. We also have Ashoka's pillar, the edicts, through which he actually tried to set out values which we call dharmas and let people understand by and large about being nonviolent towards not only living beings, humans, but other living beings that are non-humans, etc. And then we have examples of, and then, as I say, the second round of globalization through which uh, humans and knowledge traveled through the Silk Route, through the Spice Route, and creations such as knowledge centers such as Takshashila, Nalanda, fantastic examples of social design, design aggregations. Of course, there was also the library, the Alexandria Library, the Library of Alexandria, which was later burnt down. And we know that through all of this, the idea of sharing knowledge, uh, cultural tangibles and intangibles, such as cuisine, such as ceremonies, such as scripts, because Siddham, for example, traveled from India, went into Japan, and became, whatever it became there, and continues to live there till today. So that was the second round. Another very important thing, when I say that social design split into two at that point through control, we find the pyramids, we find the terracotta warriors, both created through design, but they were not social design because they were directed at the glory of the individual. Whereas if you look at Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, the Indus Valley, recent archaeological excavations have proved that all the mounds of the dead were equal. There was nothing for kings. And so archaeologists say today and historians say today that Mohenjo-daro could be one of the first examples of republic and democracy where people lived as equals. And the third strand, the first one being human and nature, second one being human and human, the third one being human and technology, which set in with the machine, the Industrial Revolution, where the paradigm shifted completely to move completely out of social design, not as a kind of conspiracy or anything, but simply because the machine, which gave us which made life, living, everything through a point of view of technology, the machine did not have a sense of social design. The machine never had to share anything. And the machine also then split up time into from circadian natural time to artificial time of 3 hour shifts. The machine split community from being a joint family connected to extended family to families becoming nucleus. And that was the death of social design in those parts of the world where the individual started getting celebrated. And so I would say that this roughly could be the global context and origin of the birth and the death of social design, and death of social design in some parts of the world.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now I'm requesting to uh, Amit sir, please explore something in continuation of that in relevance with the business or industry, which will support our thought process also. Or you may add any points as per your views.
Well, first of all, thanks for this invitation, and I feel honored to be part of this August thing with all the professors and the dignitaries being there. So, but I feel I can give a diversity because I can give the inputs from as a businessman, as a person from the outside of the faculty, how people look at this. You know, faculty is obviously empowering everyone, teaching everyone, but how is it flowing or how it's not flowing to the general public or the business centers. So first of all, I'd like to take this cue from Dr. Sen, and I'd like to elaborate a few points which he took up. That I feel social design has been there right from prehistoric ages. uh, like maybe it was not clearly defined, or it's the terminology of social design has been coined now. But if you see, our culture, our religious beliefs were kind of social designs only. If people were asked to plant people trees, worship them, or plant the tulsi plant, so it was a social good which was it kept in mind, that people was giving is the tree which gives maximum oxygen, or tulsi plant is the biggest antioxidant, or even the institute of marriage. Institution of marriage is to form families, to create cohesiveness in the thing, and fixing responsibilities for the offsprings. So these were all part of the social designs, but not called as social design. The terminology was not coined, but definitely if we go elaborate more, so religious beliefs, cultural beliefs were the initial form of social design. Uh, the latest example I try to like to give is, the biggest the modern day social designs would be the internet. The internet is one thing which has brought the entire world, has generally it's got its drawbacks, but if we look at the positive, like even during the lockdowns and the COVID thing, internet was the biggest source of education, reaching people, interaction, and taking it further. I feel it is another one of the biggest innovation. If we really want to reach the people in terms of education, this is the easiest and the best mode. Taking from my example, I've been associated with the, institutes, helping people in little what way we can do. So our, this mantra, our organization mantra was freedom through education. We realized that if we can educate people, that is the best way we can empower them. So we started upgrading, schools and classrooms of the especially government schools, which were not up to the mark. Even the buildings were there, were not functional. So a very small learning came across. So we were doing a project with the NDTV and this PNG. So we are upgrading the school infrastructure, toilets and all. So I visited one of the schools, and I talked to the principal. He said, we will appreciate if you can put up a door or to one of the toilets and a overhead tank. I said, this is not much of an issue. So we can do it immediately. I said, like, but what is the big deal about it? So he said, we have three toilets in the school, government school. One is for the teachers, one is for the girls, and one is for the boys. Now, the girls, actually, the students, the teachers' toilet, that is non-functional because of lack of door, or the door is broken and the overhead tank is not there. So the teachers have started using the girls' toilets. And now the girls are being made to use the common toilet with the boys. The impact it was that girls who have reached their puberty or having the menstrual cycles, they were not comfortable using the common toilets, and the result of it was they were opting out of the schools. Now it was a shock to me. We never realized that missing door of a toilet or an overhead tank has such a big social impact. So so the point I'm trying to make is there are so many organizations, so many business organizations, people, we as business people, we spend that, corporate social funds on policies, on maybe startups, which are there targeting to make millions, but not targeted to help millions. And the basic reason is the lack of awareness. So if this social design, I feel from a business point of view, the biggest gap in the social design, modern day social design, is the communication or the awareness part. Whatever the initiatives, they are not reaching the people who can actually contribute. They are beautiful design. For example, the other day, someone came to me that they have invented a stick, walking stick. They have imported from China, which is is having an alarm. So the person can use the alarm. It has a crash alarm if the old person using falls. So there's an automatic crash alarm. It has got a the light in it, and it's also got a few other things. Even it can help the blind. So these kind of social, I feel this is a very important social part of social designing, maybe as a product, but then awareness is not there. People who it might be used or propagated commercially, but in terms of social good, this awareness, because of lack of awareness, people are not able to contribute. So putting the things in perspective, so I feel social design has been there, but it is, as Dr. Sen said, it's mired between or confused between the social good or the individual good, the capital good, or while being the capitally or doing good to the capitalist, doing the good to the social society also. So I feel this one part is very important from a business point of view.
Yes, sir. I have some type of audio. Now, I'm now, Surya,
Hello. Yes, sir. Am I
that,
audible? Hello. Am I audible?
business. Now,
Yes.
more of the what can we
Man- Manish, your voice is breaking up, at least at my end.
Yeah, even
From my side too. Yeah.
I could not
Okay.
understand clearly.
I'm
Voice is breaking up.
my voice is breaking.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Better.
No.
I think it's your internet problem, internet issue.
Surya ji, I'm audible.
Yeah, better.
Thank you. Sorry about this technical problem. Now I'm requesting to Surya sir, please explore your views in continuation of both previous discussions.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity, sir, initially. So, through the discussion, I have realized there are three important things that has been like common. One is, as ma'am was discussing about human nature and technology, and as sir was mentioning about the impact of corporate and how what are the things that is changing, what is different from social, and how corporates see social as a product or as in a different way, not exactly as a response in terms of how it has to be seen. So one thing that I would like to say is, as humans, as Mamo was discussing about humans interacting with nature, one thing that is changing from the past time to now is the situations that how people are handling the in the given point of time. So, for example, there were examples which were said, women were kept at home so that men can go and hunt animals. So that was the given situation at that given point of time. Right now, the situations are different. So as we are growing, the major one thing is the situation that we are dealing with is changing. So we need to understand how social design can play a major role to handle different types of issues that occurs. So from a design point of view, one thing I would like to say is, earlier, as ma'am mentioned, the missions were never used to speak with other missions. There was no sharing among missions. But as we entered into 21st century, now missions are sharing, but not in terms of way humans are sharing the things, but humans are able to communicate with each other. Missions are able to communicate with each other. Missions are able to share information. So the way human and mission interaction is also changing, man. So there is a some amount of ethical responsibility that as designers we should inculcate into machines for the sake of better nurturing the machines, so that they can take decisions in a socially informed manner rather than just taking yes or no, or it's not. See, if humans never deal with, most of the time the situations which we deal with are not like a yes or no. Most of the situations are like gray area where someone has to empathize with the situation and see what sort of decision has to be taken, especially in academics, for example. So every student issue is different. We can't say that कि आपको कुछ issue है तो it's like no, you won't pass. We have to understand what their past records. We need to see what is the real, is it real or what is it exactly, right? So we need to focus a bit on situation. Missions have to be taught when teaching mission learning algorithm. They should have this point of view how to take decision in terms of understanding the social context and content. And one thing adding to this to the corporate level is not reaching people who need it. So this is very quietly well said, sir. So in the current world, in a globalized world, the problem is not with the solution. The problem, one of the major problem is making the solution reach the people. As said that you know that there's a product which can help a visually challenged person, but that product not reaching someone sitting in Varanasi in some corner near a temple is the problem. So here the connectivity, even though we have the connectivity, we are not able to reach it. That's because that might be not feasible in terms of business. They might not be able to pay money at times, or it might be just reaching there or finding that a person needs it. This sort of product itself might be difficult. So there are other issues that occur when, as we grow, there are other issues that are occurring with machines, other issues that are occurring with finding who will need the products. So these are three things that I would like to highlight. One is missions are interacting. We should impart some social uh, thoughts and ethical knowledge into missions so that they can take better decisions for the well-being. And another thing is we need to see how to deal with different situations as we grow. Let's say COVID as an example. So during this part, so one thing I personally felt that there was no humanity at a point of time. We thought that humans won't help another humans when in danger. But COVID-19 pandemic made us realize that whatever happens, humans will take care of another human. It might be just giving vegetables to another neighbor, or it can be cooking a food for a person who is ill, or it is just like someone designing application to tell that how many people are sick in that area, or just informing that ki, don't go to this. It can be multiple ways. It can be just telling that ki, uh, having delivering vegetables in a cart, for example. I am ordering vegetables, and in my apartment there's a whole vehicle coming there supplying all the vegetables to for that apartment. It's also sort of social small interventions or innovation that happen, which we can note with only understanding how can we uh, induce humanity through social good is one thing, to handle different situations is one thing that we can focus for this coming time. This is few insights from me. Yeah.
Thank you, Surya. And thank you all of you because Ajanta ma'am described some prehistoric things in continuation of that on chronological way. And then Amit sir was told about that the role of the business and corporate sector. And Surya sir pointed out the target customer, especially for the social design element. Now, because India is a very cultural, diverse country in this world, and right now today we are celebrating the Ram Navami, one of the another very big festival in India. So now the question came arise in the social design think tank. What is the role of cultural diversity in social design in global context? Because cultural diversity is a major factor in any type of societal reform. So if possible, ma'am, please explore some views from your point of view. Madam, your audio.
Sorry, were you asking me to speak? Should I address that?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. What is the role of cultural diversity in social design in global context?
Right. Um, uh, you know, India is often considered to be the world capital for um, uh, initiatives that remain in the domain of sharing. And before I come to the idea of cultural constructs, and it is related to this idea of cultural constructs, that we look at social design as interconnected across various agencies of design problem solving. One of the first agencies, and Surya actually hinted at that without actually using the word, but I know when he talks about the machine, and we know that there are so many things that the machine can't do, one of them being not feel pain or hurt, right? And that was the first split that happened with humanity when the machine came in. And Surya is very right in pointing out that we have moved on to an era where we've tried to find technologies to fix technologies. So we've tried to find technologies that will now try and bring in experiential, which is being able to get a sense of touch, feel, all of that, the sensories, the five senses that we have, and empathy, which is about sharing and the feeling of others' pains. So in that context, I would say that a lot of uh, when you interconnect, so sensory is one of the agencies of design problem solving. The other very important agency of design problem solving, which is directly connected to the idea of the cultural in social design space, is actually storytelling and product ecology. Storytelling is where we create memory in order to transmit values and protocols and best practices that were created at a given point in time, and they were so good that they were meant to exist intergenerationally. And the reason why storytelling became a preferred mode is because humans typically don't like the cognitive stacking up of information vertically. They like it in the form of narrative. That's what they remember the most. And therefore, storytelling never left our parts of the world. Yet, the parts of the world where the machine came and social design was actually shunned, along with that was shunned storytelling, because they were demythologized, and those landscapes were deracinated, because the narrative structure, which is this design thinking fuzzy structure, does not work on the machine. So they actually had to get rid of it. They also got rid of sustainability, because what they were feeding into the machine was extractive material from far off places, which is anti-sustainability, right? So, and they also assume that the earth has finite resources, and if it doesn't, then they can just technologize their way through. Now, within this framework of the arrival of the machine, and I'm talking about the early arrival of the machine that created the split with social design, taking away social design, I would then bring in the cultural construct of social design on a global basis, which is Manish's question. I would actually refer to, starting from India, I would talk about the commons, which I mentioned in the first strand, which translated into sacred spaces, which Mr. Jain mentioned. They translated into sacred spaces around mostly plants and water, rivers and forests. So we have the Tapovan, we have the Vanra, etc. And why sacred space? It's got nothing to do with religion. Sacred space was nothing, that was very nicely described by Mr. Jain. Sacred space was nothing but holding of resources that are crucial to our survival, A, holding of resources that necessarily needs to be shared because these resources are finite, B, and expressing our reverence to the to the source that gave us these resources, which is nature, and that reverence itself converted into sacred, into the idea of the sacred. Now, for a lot of people in hardcore machine cultures, these were concepts that had nothing to do with so-called modern day living. But let me quote Charles Correa, one of our finest. Charles Correa said that in the urban spaces in modern India, in cosmopolitan cities like Bombay, cities like, the big cities, and going all the way up into those who have money, who are in the upper strata, the upper economic strata of society, they believe in the sacred. And that's why the festivals are carried out equally by all. And those festivals actually all reside in the sacred. Ram Navami is actually the idea of, the idea of ideals, right? Purushottam Maryada. Basically, the idea that you need to lead your life in these ways and you need to share those ideals in order to govern society as a form of governance that was called Ram Rajya. And it's a celebration of that. It is not just some religious celebration. It's actually a construct, a cultural construct, what we consider dharma. And unfortunately, the word dharmas is today equated with religion, not necessarily in India, but dharma is nothing but a set of values. It's got nothing to do with religion. It's got sacred and dharma have got nothing to do with religion. It's got to do with values built in personal spaces that are required to move out and emanate in the outer community spaces. With that in the background, I would say that the cultural constructs of the sacred reside in most parts of the world. Okay, they reside in all of the parts of the world where social design took root through the non-machine. And countries like India were fortunate to actually skip the industrial revolution and move into a post-industrial revolution. So we took the best of both. As Surya mentioned, we have technology, we understand technology, but we don't necessarily see things through the eyes of technology. Some examples of cultural construct. In the Middle East, you have a concept called musharaka. Musharaka is this idea of getting together and celebrating, much like the way we understand a mela. When you have a mela, you come together, you exchange goods, you exchange well-being, news of well-being about others, because it's not just a day to buy and sell things. It's a day where you meet, you celebrate, you find out if everybody's fine, and you go back. So mela, musharaka from the Middle East, mela from India, the carnivale from South America. The carnivale is a place where everybody of all hues and for example, if you are gay, you can be there. If you are you can be a proud woman and you'll be there. There are absolutely no boundaries. There are absolutely no social boundaries. Carnival is a place where you are free to express yourself. And I think one of the panel members, I think Mr. Jain, talked about the freedom to do things. You use the word freedom. And Carnivale is an essential expression of that. You also have one of the first ideas of social design translated into cultural idiom within the political economy space by our very own Gandhi. He took the word Swadeshi and Swaraj to mean that whatever you do within a social space. And during the independence movement, in working in tandem with this idea was Lokmanya Tilak, who needed to mass mobilize people. And what did he do? He took the cultural way out. At that time, Ganpati used to be in homes, individually celebrated. He felt that if I did a Ganpati in the Sarvajanin milieu, then everybody would come out to worship. And what could the British do in that case? What could they do? Because people have come out to celebrate their God, right? But essentially, people had come out to express empathy with each other about the chains in which they had been shackled. And Sarvajanin Ganesh soon became Sarvajanin Durga and other forms of Sarvajanin around the country. So that was taking the cultural way into social design. And of course, Gandhi's charkha, and Surya would know that better than anybody else being a product designer, that the construct of the charkha essentially conveys the idea of the social. Charkha, the singular product of the charkha, the object of the charkha, they say literally threw the British out through social mobilization. Of course, there is the Kumbh Mela. I mean, if you want to sanctify yourself, you could just go there and take a dip in the ocean, right? In the confluence of river and, the river meets the plain. But that's not what you do. What you do is you meet on a given occasion. And notice they say that the Kumbh Mela, when you look, that's the only congregation of human that shows from the outer space, like the Great Wall, right? And notice that there is never a touch wood, there's never a problem during Kumbh Mela. There are no riots, there is nothing, because people have met there with a sense of communitarian empathy, sense of communitarian and empathy. You also have, of course, Ram, the effigy burning and Holika, and you have the harvest festivals, Ugadi, Baishakhi, Nabanno, and you have similar festivals actually continuing till now, till date, of course in Africa, but also in the Scandinavian countries, where before the winter sets in, where all the green crops start turning white, and they know that now they'll have to remain indoors. They light a fire, that bonfire, fire being giver of life, becomes very important. And they eat all the white crops and they go into hibernation after that, knowing that we're not going to have much to eat if we haven't stored. And that becomes their point, the intersection point, where they know that it is only through social design that we will store and we will share and distribute to last the punishing winters. So roughly that. And Manish, you being an artist in the domain of artistry, you have Hakusha's Bindu, where he looked at Bindu and he created from Bindu almost geometrically the arrangement of space that moves out of that singular entity of the Bindu. And there is also Sebastian Salgado from Brazil, whose photo essay on women became famous because, through his, Dayanita Singh also, because through their camera alone, they were able to create and reinforce social spaces. So I would actually take these as examples of, the cultural. But Manish, if I may indulge your, attention, one example of technology being directly used to get converted into into cultural construct, and with the idea to create social space, is this this young engineer who was the only engineer in his village, a rural village of India. I'm talking about at least a decade and a half ago, where he won one of those business awards, one of those Times Business Awards, or one of them, where he had built something called Ganesh. And what was Ganesh? Ganesh was actually, Surya, you may want to look that up. Very fascinating. This young engineer, the only engineer who comes back to the village, he says that, when I was a kid, my grandfather, who was young then, would hold my hand and take me to the pump in the agricultural field. And he would have to put it on, come back. My grandfather advanced in age, and then it was my father who did that. And then my father grew old too. By the time he went for his engineering, it was a very dangerous, because they had to go at night, they had to go in the daytime under the burning sun. So what did this young engineer do? He actually built a sensor, and of course the internet was there, so it was like an IoT that connected the actual apparatus, the pumping apparatus in the field with the connector at home, and he named it Ganesh because it was it was like Ganesh has granted us siddhi, and we no longer have to go out into the dangerous field. We can have water sitting at home. So that, I think, is a great cultural translation of things in social space that only cultures like India can do. And then I know those from machine cultures laugh at these, but ultimately they're also trying to figure how this kind of tacit knowledge can be built into the machine, as Surya just mentioned.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you in a very, you provided the details in a very good way related with the storytelling and then the symbolizing and then the trade, lots of trades and festivals including that, and right now incorporated with the technology also. So now in continuation of that, I'm requesting to Amit sir, please explore something in views of your the business domain or on the social domain, because both are the important.
First of all, thank you so much. Dr. Sen explained it beautifully, and it was simultaneously learning for us also, the in-depth analysis she shared. So thanks for that. So a small point I'd like to add here is in business, there's a norm. We say don't try to sell things which you think people want. Don't try to sell things which you think people want. Sell things which people actually want. So this, I feel, is very much applicable to the this social design. That normally we, in all goodness and all fairness and with a positive motive, try to construct, give, share, partake, or propagate things which we feel people want. But actually, we don't go into the depth of to realize what actually people want. I'll give a small example, like I've already touched it. The school thing, which toilets I shared, that the female dropout rate was very high. The older grown-up girls, because of the commonality of the or sharing of the toilets. Now this is a cultural thing which we need to take cognizance of. And if we go into the Middle Eastern countries or more stringent or a more conservative society, instead of creating a bias, right? We normally end up creating a bias. Oh, they should not be like this. They are too conservative. This we should accept that this is thing, and we have. I'm saying this is a personal matter. So instead of challenging or having a bias, what is the solution? So though being a very strong advocate of co-education and having a healthy relationship, I feel the overall growth of children or humans, it's very important to have that interaction with the male and female. But keeping in view this cultural biases or this cultural, I will not say biases, but cultural realities. So we have to design things accordingly. We have to, like, I strongly feel that in rural areas, even in India, if we have, only boys and only girls schools, we will have much better results. We will have many more girls enrolling and, coming out or, taking the education. So we can't have this bias that it has to be co-education, which is better. It is better, but still it is maybe not suitable. Similarly, I saw, like recently I was involved also in this earthquake in Turkey. I'm into pharma, and we had to, the companies I'm dealing with had to rush some pharma aids. So there was a discussion out there, and there was jokingly someone said that there was a aid from the some Western country, and they sent all Western clothes for the women in the Turkey or maybe the Middle East or Syria. Now here again, this is total ignorance of the local cultural realities. They know that the women out there will not wear the Western clothes. But being unaware or being not taking cognizance or not taking the account of the cultural diversity, we are wasting an initiative. So I strongly feel that whenever any social design or a designer is planning or kind of taking a thing forward, the cultural diversity of the set of people, society or country or state, they need to be strongly taken into account so that the result or the innovation actually reaches the needy. So I definitely feel that cultural diversity plays and has to play a very big role in the social designing.
Can I? Hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
You are.
Thanks for the very interesting examples about chakra and even the dress context, which you said that even though they need it, they are not able to use it because it just because of the context. So getting into this, I really found few insightful things. One thing is beginning with the chakra thing. So the chakra reminded me of Lota. So Lota
Absolutely.
is a product which is beyond culture. I mean beyond. Religion, beyond spaces, beyond regions. It is beyond like many aspects. So product plays a very important role here because at the end of the day, whatever activities that they have to do, whatever interactions that they have to do, it has to be through a particular tangible form to some extent. So I believe that culture has a major impact on multiple things because of two things. One is because culture has two things. One is context and one is content. For example, let's say if the context is Ram Navami today, we have different things that we follow. Let's say that we need to do have a puja for we go to Ram Gudi and do some things. We wake up in the morning. If it is a Christmas, we have a different set of things that we do. If it is a Ramzan, we follow a set of things. So every culture comes with a particular context and one particular content. So and this culture is traveling across the globe nowadays. It's not confined to, let's say that if something is happening in Varanasi or if something is happening in Bombay or if something is happening, it's not limited here. It is passing. For example, few examples can be, we have seen that Holi is now celebrated across the country. Whereas initially, if we see around 3 decades or 2 decades back at least, it was
Yes.
most of them it was toward the northern side. Now even in Bangalore, in many smaller cities of southern side also we start to celebrate. It's not limited to India now, it is celebrating globally also. That also we have seen. Let's say Diwali is celebrated globally. Recently, even in the UK, after this, they have celebrated Diwali inside after him being the prime minister. So now culture is being traveled across the world, which is creating another new wave. So recently, we were discussing about this concept called globalization, where it's not like other countries are not only influencing, we started influencing the other world. So there's a range of products that is coming. Let's say IKEA came into our country and they started having products which will satisfy the need of Indian community. Let's say they started some graffitis for from temples and from history of India, they imparted on their particular furniture. And for example, McD, for example, they started adding flavors which will meet the taste of Indians. So they are trying to be more global nowadays. So now the beyond the globalization to design products to the need of particular region for the particular culture has become more. That is where I guess now the next coming wave would be like designing products according to the needs of particular culture, so that people will culture as in it can be see culture is, for me personally, culture is something, the belief system that we believe in and we follow. So it can be like, to make that happen, let's say I am here, I'm doing something, I need a particular product with some hints of Indianness in it, for example, but I want to carry this to US. So now it is, I want a dhoti even though I'm in US. For example, so I'm working in US, so I need a dhoti. So now I have taken my culture from India to there. So this is a range of changes that are happening, and for social design, the impact of things would be from products, it can be infrastructure, it can be services, it can be policies that helps to for the welfare of social needs of the people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Uh, Now, in context of the cultural diversity, we are now shifting of that. Then the question raised, what are the challenges and opportunities of working in social design on a global scale? That is a very major question in the mind of us as a thinking of that. What are the challenges and opportunities of working in social design on a global scale? Right now, in a very fast time type of very lots of communication materials are obviously available. So now I'm requesting to ma'am, please explore something on this.
Okay, so should I start, Manish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Uh, the challenges and opportunities of the global context of design, and I really like the examples taken by both Surya and Mr. Jain about our global outreach, where a very important thing said by young Surya, and I really appreciate that, because when the very young say this, then that's the hope for the future, where he said that it's not just things that we're taking from them, it's things that is going from here to there. And do you know when Professor Abhijit Banerjee, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics, I think in 2017, when he along with Esther Duflo, his partner spouse, and Michael Kremer, the three of them won the Economic Sciences Nobel Prize. Do you know what he was wearing, Surya, for the ceremony with the king and the Nobel committee there? He was wearing the dhoti, worn the Bengali style, the way Rajnath Singh wears it, like the way Atal Bihari Vajpayee used to wear. He wore that. He wore a dhoti with a gold border, and he wore the Nehru jacket. And what can be more splendid than that, than to celebrate the idea that, I come from a different land. That land actually taught me most of what I know. Just so happens that I came to another culture and I picked up more. And by synergy, I won the Nobel Prize, being within the geopolitical context of that country. And I think that was his way of saying that. And Esther Duflo, who's French, also wore a sari. So that point that you made is very well taken. And I think as a product designer, Surya, now it's your job to figure out. Already at Fab India, you can just pull up something and buckle, and that'll become the dhoti. And you have all the pleated saris buttoned and everything, and down to the last pleat of the anchal, you can just wear it and pin it and velcro it, and your sari is worn, right? So we have to move with the times, of course, but the appreciation of what is local and how that gives us our identity is very important, and those are, of course, the idea of opportunities. So Manish, what I would do here is, in that's a fantastic aspect you've brought in, the challenges and the opportunities. Let me first look at the challenges. Let me look at what we consider to be the challenges. Now, uh, I start predicating my thoughts, which is actually in consonance with Surya and Mr. James, which is that what we know about social design, and presuming that, and of course we know from our design problem solving that it is intricately connected to sustainability. That's why the sacred space is intricately connected with social design, with storytelling. It's intricately also connected to our sensories. And another very important agency of problem solving in design, from where the idea of tacit knowledge comes, which is constructivist form of knowledge, which is building of knowledge as observe and learn. So you look, you observe, you read your stories, you get insights out of those, and intergenerationally there's something that comes out that has got built not through cognitive sources, but through observation of nature, observation of other people, observation of societies, observation of behavior. And a lot of that is, of course, got encrypted through storytelling. And the important thing about the opportunity of constructivist learning is that it's it is native. It is native to our understanding. So therefore, speech, for example, is constructivist and native to us, but writing is not. And part of the reason why the society at that time was able to start controlling was because they controlled through writing. And writing is cognitive. It is not instinctual. Somebody has to teach you. It is an acquired form of learning. But so if you take the native forms of learning, where speech is one of them, and your understanding of nature around you and people's behavior around you, and as Mr. Jain correctly said, why should you mix up things that are considered to be liberal with things that are cultural yet liberal, but you're calling them conservative. That is a very profound set of dialectics, and the world has missed the point. And that, of course, that falls, of course, lies with the West, that it is their version of everything that for the past so many decades we've had to digest, right? And today, as Surya says, we've come of age and we are actually, exporting things, thoughts, and ideas. And so, taking that, thought a little further, I would say that in some sense, and I say this to my students, I said this just yesterday, when we talk about social design, when we talk about sustainability, and whatever I said to them at the end, the students came and said, "Ma'am, हमारा knowledge तो पहले घर पे ही होता है ना, हम पहले तो घर से ही सीखते हैं, बाद में हम बाहर जाके सीखते, बाद में स्कूल जाके सीखते, पहले गांव से सीखते, घर से सीखते, परिवार से सीखते, गांव से सीखते." So that is a complete understanding of how knowledge resides within family and community, extended family. And such young students are actually able to, उनको महसूस होती है, they're actually stepping out and saying that. So the point I was trying to make to them is that you are students of design and you're located in India, and you have this pressure to have to learn all your design reading. You have to learn a lot of your design through literature that is based on Western thoughts and printed in the West. And they're very good at creating literature. We're not very good at that. We're terrible at that, actually. We should get better at it. But you see, when we ignore our tacit understanding of social design, sustainability, the vehicle of storytelling, our use of sensory, and we opt to understand how our so-called user-centric design from the West, which is exactly what Mr. Jain said, that we sometimes we think we know, but we don't know. And the gap between user-centric that is learned in a cognitive way versus user-centric that comes from the ground is what actually built a product ecology, where they say the Shilpi, Shilpan, Shilpa is where the designer, the Shilpi, knew what product to make. He didn't just go decide one day, let me make this, let me just, make. He knew what the village wanted, what the larger community wanted. Next, he worked with a team who also knew what materials were best suited for that product and best available. After that, in his mind, the ideation would start. That was the Shilpan. So the Shilpan part was intricately connected to the user and the materials. And then what came out of it as a solution was the Shilpa. So that product ecology integrative process got broken up into silos during the industrial revolution, because the machine did not know how to work together. And that typically continued in the digital domain. You see, the digital domain talks about 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? It doesn't know how to build continuity. And luckily, there is a certain aspect to technology which is analogous that came with the early technologies. And we know how difficult it became for the elderly and others to to plug into the digital. We know that, right, Surya, during the COVID. And then we had to start thinking of how to actually, the opportunity of a technology became a challenge, which is true of all technologies across human history. But in this case, because there was a lot of aggregation of technology over a very short period of time, and because there was also this bias that if you did not know technology, you were no good, that it created social divisions and the digital divide in society. And a lot of it is being addressed by the work that Mr. Jain and his peers are doing, because there is a sense of empathy you have, Mr. Jain, that our technology cannot be this hardcore technology. It has to be something that moves into the domain of people. So let me predicate this as an idea that because of the machine, social design was lost. Okay, now for 100 years, for about 300 years, it was analogous technology, and then in the last 150 years came digital, right? And we reached a stage where we realized, and those in the West realized, that we had lost the ability to build products in social design spaces. One of the first to actually point this out was a German philosopher called Tonis, who made a distinction between Gesellschaft and Gemeinschaft. Gemeinschaft is what is traditional, what is time tested, and what is in people's domain. Gesellschaft is what you build from outside exogenously, that people find it difficult to accept. And Tonis, the philosopher, was able to identify this as part of the culture. He says we had a very advanced form of culture where people were able to use all the products that we built, and suddenly after the Industrial Revolution, it became different. Within the technology realm, there was Henry Dreyfus, who brought in telephony, and whose form of telephony became one of the most perfect forms of communication, because it became an extension of our sensories. Because when we held the phone, it was our ear, and when we spoke, it was our mouth, and it had tangibility, right? If you compare that with a mobile phone, it has none of that affordance. It is just a flat thing. You don't know where to hold, you don't know where to touch, it can fall off, it can just slip out of your hand. And if you remember, I mean, I don't know if young Surya remembers that, but we remember that, I know as a mother, when I spoke to, my sister for hours together, my little kid would come and she would just try to pull it out and pull the wire and pull the handset, nothing would happen to it. Nothing ever happened to it. It was beyond obsolescence. That was, and they say that Henry Dreyfus's telephone was one of the most perfect example of not only product designing, but also not only product designing and the connection of product designing with technology, but an instrument of social space. Because if you remember, Manish, after the war, the different wars, the widows were given kiosks, telephone kiosks, right? So that particular telephone would provide earnings for her family. And the telephone became an instrument of social design, which you find only in countries like India. It is one of the rare countries that actually took the telephone and put it into, social domain for disability, people with disability, for war widows, for others. The other technology, of course, I would mention, which Surya mentioned, is Tim Berners-Lee's the internet. And the opportunities of the internet, so fantastic, because it also created all these global supply chains, and it brought the world together, right? But just as we know that the downside of technology are so many, but let me talk about the upsides. In recognition of the fact that the West had lost social design spaces, they tried to bring that back by creating, for example, social computing, with programs like computer supported collaborative work, CSCW. They brought back what is called wearable computing with smart material embedded into the product that would help you feel once again, right? They've also brought back what is today called there's a group in MIT where they're trying to actually build computation that helps you talk to multiple people, etc. But basically it goes back to the internet. And of course the internet brought in social media, right? And social media was fantastic, because there were so many ways that you could use social media. And very quickly, within a few years' time, social media hurled itself into this ignominy of making people unsocial. This is this one media where you sit in a room, put on your social media, and talk to your friends and to your siblings and spouse who are in another room in the same house. I mean, it is only this media that will make you do things like that. Social media is a media which is anything but social. And we know about all that, so I'm not going to talk about it. But the downside, a proven downside of it today is that people have got into the area of depression, and they say that that technology has created technology that was actually, because they say that the human brain is wired to actually connect. And social media actually went against that propensity to actually disconnect across people, and become something that is counterintuitive to social design. It's difficult to explain, but I think we all understand what we're talking about here, right? So the neuroscience evidence that the brain is hardwired to connect and the brain is sociable was actually rejected by disproven by social media, where you actually, even though you used a network of machines, which is what the internet allowed, you ended up becoming individualized in your communication. And so it created what is called social stress, and it went against the idea of also John Locke's very early proposition that man is a social animal. We stopped being social on this fantastic medium. So there is a lot of today, I know amongst the students, a different kind of projects that they're taking up is actually trying to fight how not to use social media because it causes depression. So this anti-movement from social design away from social design away away to another zone, and then back to social design through the internet, and once again counterintuitive to social design. This complexity is something that we need to recognize. I would also mention over here the West recognition, and it's quite profound. The West recognition comes in various ways. In 2009, the Nobel Committee granted the Nobel to Eleanor Alstom, a Swedish woman. She, for years, had tried to understand how commons that we call sacred spaces and that we have known for like at least 70,000 years, and that has been recently discovered as a concept in the West, where she applied her economic sciences understanding to say that commons are best protected when those living close by to those resources take custody of it, not ownership, but custody, and do self-governing. And that is exactly how we've done, that is what we do with sacred forests. But we didn't win the Nobel, did we? The Nobel came to a Westerner from the West, and we need to understand that our time-tested thoughts need to be articulated by us as being ours. And by that, I don't mean any sense of proprietorship. I just mean a sense of pride. I just mean to say that we need to speak with more confidence. We need to say, look, I was taught sustainability at home. I was taught that when I came out of the bathroom and if the tap went tip, 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 my grandmother would come howling behind me. Because she said, Alakshmi ho rahi hai. Lakshmi ghar chhod ke nikal jayegi. That tacit knowledge that comes from constructivist idea is something we learn from the time of our birth. We also learn in school from our teachers in other ways, not through the cognitive text, NCRT textbooks. We learn it through, their daily exhortation of ye mat kar beta, ye theek nahi rahega. They will have their own examples. And what we need to do is to get back ownership with pride and say, look, this is what I have to offer. Like Mr. Jain correctly said, you send clothes to Turkey, which is one of the most conservative countries today, so-called conservative. Now, I have a really real problem with those words too, because that's their clothing. Okay, you want to help them, give them what is going to be helpful to them. Don't tell them, don't lecture them. Okay, it's what has happened with most of the global problems today. The geopolitical problems are because they've been trying to impose their idea of what is liberal, what is social, what is political, what is democracy, what is etc. Right? We need to actually bootstrap, take a step backwards, and we need to say all the things within our Indic civilization that need critiquing, we will critique. And all the things that are facilitating, we will put forward as our own, virasat of design problem solving. Okay, and we will not. So when you talk about user centric, and this I would address to both Mr. Jain and to Surya, and I've talked about product ecology, which is this continuum of a process which got segregated into silos through the machine, and because it got segregated, the and because through modernism they manufactured things that was decided in boardrooms by advertisement and corporate owners. And they would say, because a machine is capable of making, let's say, a certain kind of, let's say, blade, let's just make, because it'll get us a lot of profit. And the user had to adjust to it. By the late 80s, when computing got distributed, distributive computing, through which we had rapid prototyping and tooling, and we could now go back from assembly line to batch processing, people started revolting that idea and saying, no, first we'll decide what the user wants, then we will decide how to make it. And so the idea of user-centric design was introduced by Don Norman and others, an idea that we did not have to even take into consideration, because our user-centric was intricately built into our product making system. Why should we have to grapple with that? We already know that our products are supposed to be user-centric. It is not to be seen as a separate standalone thing. So first they discovered user-centric. Then they discovered human-centric, which is this whole grappling of how the human grapples with technology. And then they discovered life-centric. We had life-centric right from the beginning. Our sacred spaces are life-centric. We don't need those terminologies. And I come out strong because, you provide leadership, Mr. Jain, Surya, you're all in charge of, all these young people around you, Manish. And Manish and I are, of course, we have had a lot of discussions. So we have a kind of, I understand how Manish thinks. He's fantastic in these regards. So I would say that it's very important for us to see how the transformation in their mindset about not to be technocentric, but to come into the human domain and the life-centric domain, and how to use technology to do it and not the other way around. Not use people to wrap themselves around technology, but have technology to adjust to people, right? And this is a worldview we always had. So in the 60s, somewhere when they started realizing that we have lost our social domains, the corporate in their guilt introduced this idea, that was the early makings of CSR, where they said 1 or 2% of the corporate profit would go into public art. And that's how they built Clement Meadmore and Henry Moore and other sculptors, etc., built art in public domain, because art had nothing to do with their daily lives in the machine-centric domain. Art was something else. Whereas for us, design, art and craft and culture is on the same continuum. And of course, now we have, as a continuation of that, we have the CSR, which is fantastic. And I think CSR helps to, bridge the gap between what innovation is there and where it is needed, as Surya mentioned. If something is there, but we don't know about it, like Mr. Jain mentioned, the walking stick, right? That I take these examples, and I would also like to bring in a couple of names of designers, since I come from the world of design. I would like to bring in this realization that came upon an iconic designer called Victor Papanek, who wrote an iconic book, Design in Everyday Life, where Victor Papanek came out with very strong words about the corporate, strong words to the corporate sector in the 60s, where he said that you are the most disastrous messengers in civilization today, because you build products that are not only not needed, that are not only useless, but they marginalize people. And he actually said it in so many words in that book. And his realization came from being like the corporates to what he came when he visited the native Indian reservations and the Navajos and the Hopis. And he realized, to his utter surprise, that the way they manage resources, the way they build food, which makes their economies completely self-sufficient, their product ecology, their social ecology of having food and distributing, etc., was far superior to the machine idiom. And that's when the transformation happened. The transformation happened with Western thinkers in profound ways. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude to these thinkers for actually making the shift from this complete arrogance about You don't need people and social domains. You just need products and profits. To shifting back to an understanding that we today need to painstakingly build back what we deliberately gave away during the Industrial Revolution. And the one thing that they're struggling to get back is storytelling. If you watch Avatar, it's all a mishmash of things that they've taken from everywhere. And it is actually, the first time you watch Avatar, it's fantastic with those glasses, etc. But after you watch that, maybe you'll watch 2-3 times because the special effects are so great. But after that, there is no story. You see, if you watch The Way of the Water, where that whale-like creature comes, they could have built a story around the whale, and the whale says, this happened, this happened, this happened. That's how I was pushed out of that place. It doesn't have stories because their ability to build stories has been lost across the last 500 years. So the opportunities and the challenges are manifold, and they're also kind of partnered with each other. And they're, in some sense, many of them are solvable. I take an optimistic view that, social design, the construct of social design is a very powerful construct, and that cannot be killed. And if they need to learn their lessons from Africa or from the Indian subcontinent or from the East Pacific Rim, or even from East Europe, so be it. South America, so be it. But let them take those lessons. We should not be the ones to think, oh, I need to take those terminologies to build into my work. We don't need terminologies. We have the concepts already. We can put in our own terminologies.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Wonderful explanation about the challenges and very chronological order. Now, in continuation of that, I'm requesting to Amit sir, please give your input also in continuation of that, or maybe in your view.
See, the challenges, I think so we've already touched upon that, it has to be designed for the individual needs of that particular cultural needs of that particular region, the sect, the set of people, the religious backgrounds and all. But I like to dwell more on the opportunities. Today, if we see that, world has evolved, and till the world had become a global village, there were individual ecosystems which were self-sustainable, and it was not always the same. I'll give a few examples. I don't know whether we are all aware that potatoes, which is the most staple today in India, is not an Indian product. It was basically an imported product. So imagining what change, with what a revolution it has brought in. I feel today half of, like, not in a proud way, but still a majority or a big population of India is surviving on potatoes. So this is a very big example of globalization, global opportunities. Same way, strawberries now are growing everywhere in the world. Tractor was a big revolution, which is actually brought in the green revolution. Otherwise there was a limitation in animal plowed fields and all. And recently my wife visited Arunachal, and there they say that they are such a self-sufficient ecosystem. They still are dependent or using a natural bridges made of natural trees, means trees entangled naturally or humanly, and they have made it bridges out of that. So
Root
it's such a
bridges.
sustainable and such a
Yeah.
green solution, and which can easily be aped or propagated or promoted across the world. Similarly, I'll talk about so many other, like Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a big example, which was literally dying, because we had as Dr. Sen touched upon it, we lost pride in anything which was Indian, anything which was traditional. But now, fortunately, it's regaining its glory. And Ayurveda is such a, like, it might not be a solution to everything, but it is the solution to lot many ailments, and a very cheap and a affordable solution. And being in pharma, I'll share without naming the product or the company. I know companies who are having access to products which can really do a big social good, but they just don't want to deal with it because there are no profits in that. They don't see any value addition to it. Though in terms of society or humans, they are beautiful, wonderful products across the world. So here I'll come to Mr. Surya. I'll refer to Mr. Surya. As I've learned you're a product designer. I at times wonder one product which I've really marveled. I'm marveled or really impressed is the pressure pump at my place. I'm using a Grunt Force pressure pump. It's been installed for the last 10 years, and believe it, it works how many times in a day, at night, whenever any tap is open, the pressure pump is working. Not even once it has had any problem, any issue, not even maintenance is required. I mean, I'm really impressed. But where is it being used? In a pressure pump which is not doing any value addition. It's just a I'll say add-on feature in my place, to give me pressurized water in the pump. But if it's actually used where it is required, and this kind of technology, but again I've seen it will not be promoted in a agriculture field or in a place in a village where seriously every day there are things are government institutes where they are installing pumps or machines and all, where most of the time they are not working, people are suffering despite machines being there, they are not operational. I mean, look at the design, but where it is being used. Similarly, again, if we are all aware, let's be open about where are the best designs in this world. It's military. Today, the best of designs are used in the military. The military vehicles, the military aircrafts, the military equipment, the best, the brains, the best infrastructure, the best, the amount, money, everything is going in military designs, which is really very, very unfortunate. So the best of resources is not going to the good of the world, but rather the worst. It's going to the worst possible thing, destruction of the world. So I personally feel like, I don't know whether they are, but I strongly promote there should be forums where design, the social design or the product designers like you have forums across the world where, cost effective, localized kind of designs, are shared, promoted and other thing. And here, as ma'am said, CSR activities can be involved. Today, I'm again repeating, they are corporates who are, okay, they are there to make capital, but they corporates who genuinely want to help, but they're not aware. So if there are platforms where, designers like you collaborate across the world, and then those, and the corporates have access to such platforms, okay, these are the 10, 20, 100 designs which are, really useful for the social good, and they pick up and promote those things. So I really feel this is a big vacuum. Similarly, ma'am talked about the pride and of the Indian culture and our tradition and all. I'll take it one step further. Forget about pride. We are more ashamed of our culture. It's been built into our psyche. I'll give you a small example. Recently, I came across a study by an Indian doctor at an international level. He's done a study of the positive effects or negative effects between usage of water and toilet paper, after stool.
Yeah.
So this was the first kind of study. We all come across what is better, what is there. They say this is good, bad, whatever. So he did a scientific study and a group of doctors did it and across the world. And it came out that definitely, our way, that water is a better way, definitely for the Indian subcontinent and people having dietary habits like Indians, where we are having more of roughage, more of thing. Definitely water is a better thing. And toilet paper is okay for a Western kind of a diet where the roughage or the, it's more of meat product and all, where the, roughage is much less. But all these years, we have been, kind of looked down upon or using water without having any scientific basis. And if you see the other side, look at the amount of trees, the wood being used for toilet papers. I have not seen any concern or any highlighting of this factor anywhere. At least I have not come across where people have raised any concern about the toilet paper and the number of trees being used or cut down to create toilet papers. So I think these things really need to be taken up at the social design levels. Same way, like ma'am talked about machines and the personalized things. So a very good example is, over the years, we moved from self-tailored or personal tailored clothes to standard clothes. And we looked down upon those tailors or darjis sitting on the corner, stitching, making things for us. And we were so proud we are wearing a branded stuff, ready to use, ready to wear kind of thing. And over the years, realized what are we doing? How can each and every person fit into a particular size? I'm saying there might be a point, a centimeter of difference or half a centimeter or a millimeter difference, but there is bound to be difference between different body structures. But we just ignored. And fortunately, now it's back, though at a whooping cost, that, personalized tailoring is back into thing. But as ma'am said, we should realize it was always there in a culture. So not what everything westernized or everything which is corporatized is not better. Our traditions are like just this, you have to prove them again and again. And lastly, I'll touch about the storytelling. Today, to be honest, I feel sad about it that in my school or in my kids' school or any of the schools I've come across, I have not come, at my time, we used to have this moral science period where there was one period every day or at least once in a week where social civic sense, social things, stories, they were told to us. That culture was built up at that time because we all know whatever the parents says, a student really listen to the teachers. Whatever a teacher tells the student is sacrosanct for them. So if at school levels the civic sense is taught or the social obligations are taught, it will have a much bigger impact. But I really don't see any such efforts in whether it's traffic sense or civic sense. I don't see any curriculum in schools which is addressing this. Same way, my knowledge, I just shared about people, trees, I talked about the tulsi, I talked about tradition, why women, used to wear what do you say, bindi and sindoor, why we wear, wore the bangles. They were all scientific things. But I got this knowledge all through Amar Chitragatha. I was really fond, and during my heydays, my childhood days, I really used read lot of Amar Chitrakathas. They taught me so many things about my culture, about the values, about the importance. But all this is totally missing now. I think it's I don't think that they are even published now, or any such things or any such stories. So this is sad, but I think still as a social part of the social design, these things need to be relooked. Because if we teach people, as again ma'am said, okay, do this, don't do this, it's not going to make sense. Only if it is in form of storytelling, it's connected to our history, it's connected to our culture, it is made relevant to them, it's proved to them in a story way. That is really going to, and that is the need of the hour. So again, as social designers, I'll say this is my two bits that this things really needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank, thank you for the valuable input, and hopefully, social designer team or the other thinkers will surely do or think about this perspective also. In continuation of that, I'm requesting to Surya ji, please, if possible, then you will give your input also, then we will move on the next.
So thanks for filling the gaps. Amit Jain has spoke about multiple aspects of the vacuums that are like how we are ashamed about our culture at sometimes. And ma'am, thanks for speaking about the product obsolescence. I mean, sometimes I feel like as designers, we know that a bulb can be blown for 10,000 hours, but it was strategically reduced. It can be seen in many parts of our life. For example, as simple as mixer grinder, which my mom had, it was running for 10 years. Now I bought a mixer grinder 2 years back. It had an issue after just 1.5 years. It's a simple example of how product epsilon. Yes, I mean it is connected with consumerism, then money comes into the picture. So it's a bigger thing. So, but what I feel that is few things I wrote is social design is going to play a very impactful role in geopolitical handling geopolitical issues, because these are the designers or people who actually are trying to understand the behavior and the lifestyle of the people and take decision accordingly rather than just the data or something. So one of the major issue with the technologies, as Amit Jain sir was speaking about the tailored product, one thing is technology at whatever they call personalization, it is still having a monotonous decision making, or like it makes the people to take a similar decisions. Because let's say I know 10 people who are following a particular person, the next day they are going to ask for the same thing. So whatever the technology is growing, however it is, they may call it customized. We are trying to make it much more tailored, informative mails for you. It is going to be again a monotonous on a very small group of people, maybe for 10,000 people again. That is can be overcome just by the social design aspect, where there are people to tell things which is beyond technology and what they can get it from beyond the internet. Because from childhood there are many practices that we have learned even there was no internet with us. Let's say that key we know that key if we go to at a place, let's say I go to a neighbor place, how to behave. So these were the practices which has been taught at home, might be parents, might be neighbors have taught me. Or for example, I know that how to speak, or I have to be a bit silent when I go to some religious place. I know that key I shouldn't misbehave in a function. So even if the food is bad, I know that key, I mean there are small things that we learn as part of our how our parents have taught us. So these things can be only known by people by speaking with the people. So one thing is this, and social design is going to be another impactful role in health. Health in not only terms of health issues which we have it, but as the point raised about the digital challenges that we are going to face, and our mental issues that are coming because of the technology. And it can be also like cognitive issues that are coming. So these are the different sort of things that we need to consider while designing, especially so one of the major challenge that right now in the social design aspect is we don't have enough people to actually do it in the right way, who understands, who goes there, who lives there, and try to understand them. It's not about numbers, it's more about the feedback, insights that depends how what products they have to come up with. We are not able to find the right people who are ready to spend time on ground rather than on screen. That is one thing. And you rightly said, sir, it's not about the plastic or paper war. It's not about if we are using plastic, it doesn't mean that we are spoiling the nature. If we are using paper, it doesn't mean that we are improving the nature. So I said there was a conversation how many plants we have to cut if we use paper cup instead of a plastic cup. It again there's a huge debate about carbon footprint, so it can't be said which is good or which is bad. It's just that there comes the uh, how localization can play an important role. Again, I would speak about the example of lota. For example, it can be shaped, it can be made, it can be used by multiple people, it can be made in multiple ways according to size, fit in a local manner. That's where the whole world should look. We might use technology, but we need to see how locally material sources can be available. Those becomes the better optimal material or a more sustainable material for the better development of the people in and around. That way, I mean, the policies that right now which came up by the Indian government saying that the one product per district, if I'm not wrong, the policy which says that finding which is the product which is locally available and making providing it a brand around it so that it can be sold across. So these sort of things will make the world understand the cultural beliefs, you can say, systems, you can say, traditional values and things. And another thing which we are losing is the traditional knowledge that we have. For example, as simple as that, if some wound occurs, take some turmeric and apply on it, or if you have some headache, taking rest, or if you are, there are some things which we are losing with time. I mean, it's not like all the time we need to believe in some tablets. It's not all the time we need to believe in some oil. There are some ways that at our home they made us. I mean, let's say if you have some pain, just take some hot water and keep it over it if there's a smell. So these sort of things also should be taught from a school level, because might be with generation the only issue with this is there is no one to teach the logical reason behind it. Let's say why you should wear a bindi, or why how turmeric works, or how heat can help in reducing the pain. It's just that if we can let the students know the reasons behind it, they will understand, okay, the idea behind traditional way of doing it is this. So that has to be inculcated in teaching. So yeah, these are the few things. So if we can understand the lifestyle issues and behaviors, it will be our opportunities. Yeah, in a simple way. Thank you.
Manish, I wanted to slightly build on what Surya and Mr. Jain have said, uh, only to make the point that all these examples that have been so nicely forefronted by my panelists are often seen to be mumbo jumbo or what does it amount to? I mean, they have not been they've been disconnected and disjointed from their original context that Surya keeps talking about. The contextualization and the content is so important. So we got disjointed from our original content, to use Surya's word, right? And we got decontextualized. After the decontextualization, we moved on to studying books and thought processes that were not part of our culture, right? And then having spent so many decades figuring out why it doesn't make sense to me, even though I go to school and I learn these things and I come back and I mug and I write my exams and I even probably, if I have good memory, I'll even get good marks. But then one day you grow older and wiser and you start questioning these, right? And we've all reached a threshold number of people who have started questioning these because the Macaulayan system doesn't work because it's not part of our system, right? And so the disjointing of content from context that Surya has so nicely put together, this content, context have to be together. And then to take the example of Ayurveda, if only we were taught in school, starting from school, that Ayurveda is actually a form of healing uh, from our ancient, and also standing on a treatise. What is a treatise, Mr. Jain? It's Ayurveda ka hai na, ek shastra. It's all encoded in that. Um, if only we were told that Ayurveda actually starts with the 5 elements of nature, Panchabhutam. Okay? Earth, water, fire, wind, sky, or space. How is it connected to that? It's connected to that because the meta proposition is elements of nature, and the micro proposition is the human body, which is made of the exact 5 elements. And the exact 5 elements have actually got codified as the Kundalini upwards, where your lower body is earth, digestive system is fire, lungs is water, heart is air, and space is brain. Okay, and then between the macrocosm and microcosm was the built environment, where our architecture followed the same Panchabhutam principle, where if you look at the temples, you have the legs on one side, you have the steeple on the top, and the Garbhagriha protected inside, because it's a very, very, delicate part. So you wash your feet, you enter, then you enter Garbhagriha, okay, and then you look up to the sky and the Toran and the flag to tell you in which way the wind is, direction of wind, etc. If you look at our architecture, if you look at the way this these architectural principles of Panchabhutam were transferred to our vernacular architecture, and then it took an English architect who came to India and became an Indian, literally, Laurie Baker, to tell us that you should not be building architecture with material that come from far off lands and cost you, your entire bank balance. You should be building architecture that you can build from around, where it doesn't have to last for more than 25 years. You can again build. That was Laurie Baker. And in Kerala, they follow Laurie Baker. Okay, we had our architects were unknown people, because we come from the cognitive revolution, from early history of mankind, and the design paradigm that came out of it was where people worked for social spaces with designs by people who were unknown and anonymous. The authoring of design came with the Industrial Revolution, where the name of the person became more important than the design itself, because he could copyright it. Whereas we had open source. Right. And from that, Professor Anil Gupta of IIM built the Honeybee network, because he realized that they're stealing what we have been using for millennia. And because we don't have copyright, they would just take it. And I remember Vandana Shiva talking at the Harvard Graduate Design School, where she said that the reason to build GM is because you can't copyright what is from nature. Okay, you can't copyright haldi, you can't copyright neem, and these are practices we have done for millions of years, and we know how to use them. They took that, and it's called the Great Neem Robbery. And Vandana Shiva and team worked to make sure that it doesn't get copyrighted. So they decided, overall speaking, that if we add a gene into a plant, then I have invented it, then I can copyright it. That's how GM can be copyrighted. So we have to celebrate cultures like ours that had that built design in social spaces, built design without authorship for the explicit purposes of sharing, and were secure enough to think that people will steal their designs. So that paradigm is coming back through open source. We know that. And the biggest example of that today is DPG, which is the digital public good, which is this idea that a digital product that is shared by all, kept on open space, where the coding is also shared, everything. And if it is a product that actually elevates human sufferings to a level where the human stops suffering, that would qualify to be a DPG. And the startup lab that we have, where Jello is actually for autistic and cerebral palsy kid, I'm humbled to also mention that we were recently awarded the DPG, which is just one of 117 across the world. That's all. And we felt, I mean, outside of the President's Award that we have received, which felt really good, it felt good because DPG, you said, Mr. Jain, about drugs that could be given, but are not. And India has taken the lead in generic drugs, through which AIDS in Africa, through which diarrhea in Africa actually got, reduced. And of course, our vaccine diplomacy, where we gave away vaccines at a time when America was, with 1/3 of population was storing them. And we were actually giving away. And you have the prime ministers of Barbados, prime ministers of different countries from Africa actually coming out and saying, because of that, we saved our lives. So I think social design, which is built into our system because we practiced it for millions of years, is alive and kicking. Number one, we just have to look inwards and say, we have our sources of knowledge, both explicit and tacit, and we need to celebrate them. And I think in terms of, Lota, the example that Surya gave, Lota, which is also in cultural construct terms, Purna Kalash, right? No ceremony is done without the Lota. Charles Eames, this great designer who came to India at the invitation of Nehru in the 50s, before IDC and NID were formed, where Nehru had requested Charles and Ray Eames to suggest what could be the design way ahead. And Charles Eames had looked at the Lota and had said, this is one of the most perfect products built anywhere in the world. And soon after that, when NID was set up, they used the Lota as its logo. It's a half Lota. Charles Eames had also said that Indians are great at designing because they know how to use just 5 primitives for making products, all natural. Grass to make twine, mud to make bricks, wood to make products. What else? There are 2 more. There is a leaf to eat from, and etc., etc. And I think the last one he said was metals like copper, which are all actually, and bones. We use bones, right? Camel bone, etc. So in terms of, I think today the great challenge for us is that we begin to use, we have become the world leader in digital servicing. We are a world leader in open source today, right? We are a world leader in taking things into generic level and distributing. We have the heart to do it. And we lack in certain things. One of the things we lack in is exactly what you said, Mr. Jain, that our children are not taught civic sense. Okay, we are messing up our cities. We are doing things. They think it's a fashionable thing to do, to just throw things, and then the same people will go abroad and behave differently, right? So we have a challenge there, and we have these opportunities, which are both actually social design driven. The way we are messing up our environment outside, we throw things, we just chuck things out. Our homes are spick and span, and outside we do all that. How do we bridge those? The thing about opportunity and challenge is my biggest question nowadays when I talk to students and others.
Thank you. Thank you for this really very wonderful and very insightful debate. And now, in the last session, the last question is coming to my mind. And after these discussions and after the Jan's remarks, there is a need for some type of framework to be suggested, and it will work on that, and maybe we will work on that in the future, or suggest to the designers, social designers also, that how a framework of global social design is different from the regional social design framework, and what are the possibilities to make some type of new framework in between that. I'm requesting to Jan, sir, please explore something about that or give your input or any type of brief. Amit, sir?
Well, I think so. We've briefly already touched, all of us have already touched that basically, whenever we are doing anything local, so whether we are doing local or global, it has to be done as keeping in view, keeping in mind the people or the set of people or the community for whom we are doing. So if we are doing it even within the country, if we are doing for a set of people in South India who have different dietary habits, who have different day-to-day cultural habits, or we are doing for North Indian people who have different cultural habits. So the design has to be very conducive so that the end user actually uses it. Because as we've already touched, all of us, that so many innovations are done, but they are not maybe missing one local element, which just makes the entire product useless for that set of people. So any design when it's being done, whether regionally, nationally, or globally, it is very important that the designer understands or takes feedback, and actually, goes mentally or physically in that environment to see the usage of that product or that service or anything. That end of the day, is it solving the problem it is being created for? And of course, two things which I'll take from Mr. Surya and Dr. Sen is there and then, if every designer becomes conscious that any product when it's being designed or service being designed, if the cultural, the social, and the sustainability factor becomes an embedded or a part of the designing, then I think so a lot of things will be taken care of automatically. Many a times we see, maybe due to the specific demand from the corporate or the profit motive or other factors, sustainability or environment or the localization is conveniently left out. Like we touched about, ma'am talked about mobile, like, it can be easily, the design can be changed. But since it has to be something mechanical, which is easily produced, can be produced, manufactured, and all, so that element of personalization is taken away. So my thing is whether it's global or local or regional, the end user has to be kept in mind. The sustainability factor has to be kept in mind, and also I'd like to add here, profit has become a very taboo kind of a word. Like, I was doing a management course. The professor who was undertaking, he said proudly that I really charge a bomb, and I'm really making a lot of money, because it has to be mentally come out that professors or teachers are not supposed to earn.
Yeah.
Why? Why is it a taboo to make profit? As long it is not, cannibalization or it's unreasonable. But if someone is shaping the destiny of the entire world, entire country, entire future, they need to be compensated the most. So I take the example of Dr. Bose. Today he joined, like he created this thing, patented the sound system and all, and he's made millions, and we feel proud of it. So here, whenever some products being designed, so we all have to understand individually whatever our effort, whatever our intention, we have constraints. Today, Mr. Surya designs a beautiful product, and it's the best, but he will need some platform to market it, to take it to the people who need it, to globalize it. So that element of corporatization, or that business thing, or that corporate thing has to come in, and then that profit element has to come, because corporates will work for a profit. So whenever designing is been done, it has to be done that being sustainable, being people friendly, being futuristic, and conducive in all ways. That profit element also to be there, but that is where the delicate balance has to be struck. That it is still, it doesn't becomes too expensive, or kind of beyond the reach of the common people. At the same time, it has that element. At least it is promoted. So no use making a beautiful product and keeping in a backyard. No one is there to promote it. So these are two things I think I feel need to be looked into. Thank you.
Continuation of that, I'm requesting to Surya sir, please give your input and then the final remarks by the man.
Thanks for the time, everyone. So one thing is, we need designers. See, of course, the design is about problem solving, but most important than problem solving is identifying the right problem. That's where we need to see what is the problem, or what, actually not problem. We calling problem, sometimes it hurts me. Sometimes it can be a need. Sometimes it can be a problem. Sometimes it's a need. Sometimes it's an innovation. Sometimes a desire also. So we need to understand what is the need. We need to find methods to better intervene to identify the things. Then there are like many people who can solve it. Let's say, uh, whether we need to understand whether it's a social need, or is it technological need, or is it a uh, product which is needed to change the behavior. So if you can identify it, then it's the role of designers to see, to look for solutions in a technological aspect, or in a much more psychological aspect, or through just through journals, or through in other mediums. So I believe that identification is something plays a pretty much important role for the same. And also, I also think that we should impart knowledge for the generation, for our generation and also upcoming generation, to know the, I won't like to call it completely science. Sometimes it's logic, sometimes it's understanding of why are we doing the way things are doing, rather than just telling the some person to just leave the chappals outside the temple. We can just say a person that keep doing that will help you to immerse in that particular experience, feel uh, the coldness or the temperature of the stones, which will help the person to calm down and be aware, be make them aware about the senses. It's not about just to hear the voices or the bells that helps you to make your mind free. So there is a logical reason behind it. So it's important to educate designers and upcoming generation to know the reasons behind the traditional values. These are the two things. And we need more designers, or actually I call more people, to go on the ground and do things, find things, and then we can think of solution. That's one thing we have to more focus on. And see, at every point of time, it would be not necessarily that we can find localized materials, but we should see what are the local materials that can be used. Then we have to see what are the other methods that we need to import. That's something we need to create a balance, so that even there will be local economy growing up, and we are also not moving away from the advancements that is happening. So where we are trying to see what balance out both things. Let's say if we are making a product out of khadi, it's a material where different places can be sourced. And how, one thing that is also lacking is technological intervention into handicraft. That's something that we can see. That way we can use to even the people grow, society grow, even they are growing in terms of technologically. The products have a much better value. When, see, as simple as that, when I go on the road, I can get a matka for 50 rupees to 100 rupees. So with a bit of branding and some advance, it's not about technology advancement. It can be visual, or it can be aesthetic, or it can be just adding a tap to it, as we have seen it. Just adding a tap to a matka, the value of that has been grown to 300 rupees from 80 rupees. Even though the value of the tap is 40 rupees, they have fixed it. They found out a way to, yes, they have to make a hole. So they found out a tool so that they can dig a hole, and they found out that they need two small screw type structures to fix things, and there should be no water leaking, so they will add mud again to cover it up once the mud is done. So then the value of the product has increased to 150 to 200 rupees, which in turn helps the local person. Of course, tap can't be made in every city. There is some person who is manufacturing, who is supplying. So we are importing some things, we are also using things locally, improving the local economy. So we need to figure out balance between the technology, lifestyle, behavior, and the traditional. So that is what is the need, or where social design aspects to look into. How can we balance out things in much more individual manner, to in a homogeneous way, in a holistic way, understanding multiple things and coming up with ideas. That's more needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya. Now I'm requesting to Dr. Ajanta Sen, ma'am. Please give your final remarks, including all these things and whatever the said by you. Very valuable input by the last conversations by Amit sir and Surya sir. If you elaborate something more, then we will provide that.
Great. So I'll take my final comments from Mr. Jain and Surya, where both of them spoke about the two common thread of the narrative. One was education, where Mr. Jain said, when, as teachers, you're actually molding, molding the culture itself, and you have a problem actually paying teachers. That means somewhere we've got the logic of uh, who creates value very wrong. So in the way, for example, Bollywood gets paid versus teachers get paid, we've obviously got it wrong. Or even Hollywood gets paid, we've obviously got it wrong. And so I think there is a great challenge there. I think that I would take that, and I would take art as education and art as the two most effective ways of outreach of any messaging. And in this case, we're talking about the messaging in terms of social conviviality, sharing, team spirit, cooperation, building through cooperative ways, and understanding all of this in the context of global, local, because you need both. And what would be the most optimal ways to actually bridge these gaps? So I would let me just quickly talk about the idea of art, which we relegate to something that's done by fancy people. And we forget that some of the most seminal changes have come through art. For example, when we think Picasso is this great artist and whose paintings cost millions of dollars. In his own time, Picasso did not think of himself as this fancy painter. He was also a party card holder of the Communist Party of India, and he was of Communist Party in USSR, and he was invited there. Picasso is a person who said that I do not want my art to remain in the confines of a studio or chamber art where the wealthy went in fancy clothes and watched and drank wine. I want my art to be taken to the domain of people. And that's how he expanded the breadth to a fantastic kind of scale, which became outdoor murals. That means he had to also rethink the materials to use. And in terms of the size, you had to climb up a ladder, do things like that. And so that was a fantastic paradigmatic shift. The time as he was doing this, the art that he did that struck the world's attention was this Guernica, which was the bombing of this village in Spain by Franco, General Franco, and which wiped out the village because he did it early morning, because these were the resistant fighters during the Second World War. And if you look at Guernica of Picasso's, I had the good fortune to see it. It had come to the East Wing Gallery in Washington, D.C., where he puts in bulls because they're from Spain and people in complete agony. And because he did it through his cubist form of art, he was actually able to express a lot of things through abstraction that each one of us interprets. And Diego Rivera from Mexico did the same. And I think art as a messaging system has grown from there, where you have street art, you have all of that. And then we forget, which is fantastic actually, but we also forget that we have our indigenous artists who did art in public space, like Warli art, like Gond art, like Bhil art, that are living systems that started 100,000 years ago and they continue. So I think it's important that we build a bridge between what we already had, continue to have as living heritage, and plug into what others have done. So that's about art. The other thing is about education. In the context of education, I think the one point we are grappling with, where we are constantly told you're not being logical if you're wearing a bindi, what is the logic of it? Or if you're wearing turmeric or etc., we have not been able to coherently explain to them that there is a science behind it, because bindi is the third eye. There is a science behind it. So for example, when they say born with a silver spoon, it simply means that if you consume your milk in the medium, within the medium of silver, there are certain trace elements that are beneficial to the system. Why do we wear gold even if we are poor in India? Because the gold interacts with the system and metabolizes to show good, to result in good health. We've not been taught these things, right? So if we were able to convert science into social situatedness and then taught these things through social situatedness, then the logic of science would become social logic. And one of the persons who actually had initiated this process, at least officially I know, was Karl Mannheim, a Hungarian, who had built what is called the sociology of knowledge. And in that he had said that if you don't take science and find a social situatedness, that science will die, at least amongst common people. And people who took them forward was, for example, Arvind Gupta, who makes toys, science toys out of trash material. We have the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, KSSP, which is a Marxist organization in Kerala, which actually tried to reach science to ordinary people through social implications. We also have Dr. Vivek Montero, who has been building mathematical kits for children from Bastar, these forested, Naxalite infested areas, and he's been awarded by the United Nations, where he's able to teach mathematics through tools that are located in social situations. And we have such fantastic innovators. And of course, we need to mention Seymour Papert, who is now in his 90s, from MIT, who way back in the mid 80s actually took science and computing at that stage to inner city black kids, that is poor black kids, and help them build programming language from ground upwards through what is called turtle geometry, where a kid sees a turtle move and is able to visualize how speed happens, how scale happens, etc., etc. So I think a lot of this learning, which got transferred into social and cultural spaces, could be the way ahead for the greatest number of people to benefit from the greatest number of good.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for this really, really wonderful insight, and it was given by you, all of you. And thank you, participants. If anyone have any type of questions, then we have 2-3 minutes. Otherwise, we'll wind up the thing. Lots of thanks to our guest speaker. Anyone from the participants are interested to have your input or any type of question?
No, sir.
That's okay. No, that's okay. No problem. Then thank you, everyone, for the roundtable discussion on
I think there's a question.
the
Manish,
There
I
is,
think there's a
there is
question.
no
Yeah, on chat, I think there are some
question.
questions.
Yeah,
May I, Manish sir?
yeah, please, please.
एक्चुअली सर अभी हम टीचिंग प्रोफेशन में है तो मुझे ये सारे चीज जो है ये बच्चे को कंटिन्यू मैं बोलते जाती हूँ कि सस्टेनेबिलिटी क्या है। हम ऐसे टॉयज भी बनाते हैं और बच्चे को बताते रहते हैं, बट सम हाउ बच्चे को और भी ज्यादा इसमें इन्वॉल्व होने का जरूरत है। उसके लिए मुझे भी उतना नॉलेज नहीं है, पर जैसे अजंता मैम से पहले भी मेरा मुलाकात हुई और उनके द्वारा मैं ये इंसिस्ट हुई कि कैसे बच्चों को कैसे मोटिवेट करे कि वेस्ट कम करे और रीयूज रिसाइकिल का प्रोसीजर करे। तो सम हाउ ऐसे भी हम कर तो रहे हैं, पर somehow मुझे लग रहा है कि ये एक ग्रुप अकॉर्डिंग जॉइंट होके करना जरूरी है, क्योंकि हम बिखरे बिखरे थोड़ा थोड़ा टुकड़े टुकड़े थोड़ा थोड़ा प्रयास करते और फिर हम वो मर के मतलब अपना सेटिस्फाइज नहीं मिलता है कि सोशल के लिए सोसाइटी के लिए कुछ कर नहीं पाए, फिर मन आधा मन मरा होके रह जाता है, किंतु डाउट वो चला जाता है। अगर ऐसे कुछ प्लेटफॉर्म हो कि हम ऐसे इनिशिएट ये चीज हम ग्रुप में दूसरे स्कूल में दूसरे नॉलेज से, जैसे एक एरिया को दूसरे एरिया के कल्चर से मिलाए और उनसे गेन करे, उनके बारे में सुने, तो इससे क्या होगा कि एक दूसरे के कल्चर के प्रति जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, जो रिस्पेक्ट है, वो बढ़ेगा और ऐसे बहुत सारे नॉलेज हमें जानने को मिलेगा जो हमारे एंशियंट पीरियड में है, पर हम ट्रबल नहीं कर पाए या उतना नॉलेज नहीं जान पाए, इकट्ठा कर पाए। तो इसके इसके भी एक जरूरी है। अभी एक
तो इधर
छोटा सा
मत उधर
इंसिडेंट मैं बताती हूँ आज
कर।
के लिए। हाँ, जैसे एक अभी रमादान का मौसम चल रहा है, तो एक टीचर वो फास्ट में है, फास्टिंग में है, तो क्लास 10 के बच्चे को ऐसे बोल रहे हैं कि आप लोग थोड़ा सा कम बात कराइए मुझे, कि ताकि मुझे कम बात करने हो और आप लोग डिसिप्लिन में रहो ऐसे। तो बच्चे का आंसर होता है तो आप लीव लेके घर में बैठिएगा। तो क्या ये हम हमारे जमाने में टीचर को बोल सकते हैं, या ये ज्यादा फ्रीडम है या इनसेंसिटिव है ना? तो कहीं ना कहीं हम वो सोसाइटी में क्या फैमिली में भी ये जरूरी है सेंसिटिविटी को लाने के लिए। थैंक यू ऑल।
were you part of social design? आपका नाम बताओगे?
जयंती भट्टाचार्य मैम।
Jayanti, hi. From
हेलो
Ahmedabad,
मैम।
right?
हेलो मैम।
Right. Of course, Jayanti is a PhD and a fantastic teacher. Just for the other panelists, she was part of the social design course that Manish had floated in the year of the pandemic, and I had some fantastic students at that time. I mean, Jayanti was definitely one of them. Jayanti, I thought I would bring to your notice at least two platforms, and your concerns are right on spot. Especially the last example that you took. Would we have said that to anybody in our time? I mean, how can your mouth open to even say such a thing, right? So I will bring to your attention two platforms, which is not a solution to the last problem that you mentioned, but which have resonance with this idea of building a larger platform through which we can share. One of them is a proposed the new education policy of 2020, where the government officially recognized critical thinking and design thinking as the new essential skills of 21st century. And in doing so, the government set up a task force for introducing design thinking into schools. And Professor Puvaya was made the head of that, and we are part of the design thinking task force. Across a period of 1.5 years, the curriculum was made, and it is getting introduced from starting from class 6 from July. In design thinking, what they're going to do is to do work with hands, using materials, and using intent that is meant for the uh, larger benefit of society. So the curriculum actually factors into that. It also does not have the regular assessment system and no textbook. It's only through tasks. So once it comes into, and we have spent the last 1 year going from school to school across the country doing design thinking workshops where their mainstream curriculum, for example, force of gravity or things like that, can be taught through design thinking with hands-on exercises. So once it gets introduced in July, it will be the largest initiative in the world in terms of how children actually learn constructively without textbooks at the scale at which we are going to do it, because India has the scale. But I think the initiative is so nice that once you have design thinking in your school, through that you can bring in value education, like Mr. Jain mentioned, like you mentioned to the Ramadan example. You can introduce anything through design education. Okay, so that is one. The other platform I would like to mention is DSource, where which is also part of the Ministry of Education. At that time, it was the MHRD, which is also part of Professor Puvaya's, site, where for the first time design resources started getting placed on a common open source platform. And we know that a lot of craftsmen and others, so we put in design process there, different kinds of courses. Anyone can go there, anyone can learn from there. And a lot of craftsmen have come back and said that, we are very thankful we have something like this, because others get to know us and we get to know about new ways of, doing design. And it's meant for anybody. So at least these two I can cite, Jayanti, and we can always work together on
Thank you
other.
so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, everyone, for the active participation from the last 5 sessions and the roundtable discussion on the appraisal of the history of social design in India. And today's session was the global dimension of the social design. And 3 of our eminent speakers are the Dr. Ajanta Sain, adjunct faculty, IIT Bombay, Mumbai, and founder of the Design in India, JLO Law, a UNICEF and President Award winning DPG startup based at IIT Bombay plus Science IIT Bombay. Next, our distinguished speaker is Sri Amit Jain, CEO, JNS Group, Chandigarh. And after that, the next one is Surya Teja Basu, Assistant Professor, Product Design, School of Art and Design, Boston University. I heartily thank to all of you from the organizing team and from the Spark Project, Department of Applied Art, Faculty of Visual Art, Banaras Hindu University. And hopefully we will meet you soon after 1 and 2 months when we are trying to start again the 3-month short-term workshop on social design and different aspects in this school. And thank you, participants, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manish.
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Manish.